Okay, let's go do a little bit of a review on TradeLens. Now, I've been talking quite a bit about TradeLens, but those videos were actually made a year and a half to 2 years ago. And so I'd kind of like to give you an update on how TradeLens is doing and kind of give you an introduction as to how well they're working in the industry. Okay, so here's the story. TradeLens deals with shippers who don't pack the containers that they haul. So you pack a container, you haul it off to the shipping port. It goes on a container ship and it goes across the ocean or wherever its destination is. It gets unloaded at the container ship. It gets loaded onto another truck and off to its destination. Okay, during that whole path, the buyer is the only one that's certain what's in there, and everybody along the way doesn't have a clue as to what's really going in there. They see the outside of the box, and that's all. So custom authorities struggle to determine the buyer for certain imports. Okay, that's been part of the problem. In other words, containers could just appear and just be there, and you get this paperwork trail, and you get all of the pieces of paper. And the next statement is pretty key here. A study found that a single shipment of avocados from Kenya to the Netherlands involved 30 different organizations, over 100 people, and 200 individual information exchanges. Now, when I hear that as an IT type of person, I hear automation. The first thing I want to gravitate to is, how can we automate that to make it a lot easier than showing you a piece of paper every time that the product has to change hands from one to the other? So TradeLens right now is doing over 1 million shipping events every day. Now, that's nothing compared to what the Visa network or MasterCard network do in financial transactions, but it's a whole lot bigger than just what they were doing a year and a half to 2 years ago. They are continuing to grow. And here they talk about how they've grown. It says it's already secured commitments to track approximately 20% of the global ocean container traffic. 20% is huge. Who's doing the other 80%, or who's tracking the other 80%? And the question becomes, if you have to choose a shipper that's not automated, which would you rather choose? Would you rather choose a TradeLens because you know that your container is going to be well documented all the way on its trip? If something goes sideways at the end and all of a sudden your container gets mixed up with another one, you know that you're going to be able to track it back through the network and be able to see every person who changed, where it changed hands from person to person to person, or shipper to shipper, or whatever. So there have been over 90 organizations that have agreed to participate on the platform to do those million per day and 20% of the total market. So TradeLens is growing. It's growing a lot. So the way that it works is this: when you're in the country of export here, the country of export has, of course, the seller, the agents and brokers that deal with it. They have what they call a national single window. That's part of the TradeLens network. And the national single window allows the paperwork all to be developed and collated and put together. And then all of that stuff is run through the port community, whatever system that they have, so that they can view the paperwork and validate it and do the things that they need to do in order to bless the fact that this container is going to get on this ship and head on out to sea. So all that information then is collated and gets put on the blockchain. And so there's a packing list, of course. Packing list tells you what's in the container. And there's a lot of other documents that, boy, if I doubt we would know what all of those documents are unless you're completely immersed or involved with that particular industry. So it travels on the blockchain collecting information. Every time a transaction is made and it changes hands from going on the ship to off the ship to a trucker to wherever it goes from place to place, when it gets to its destination, it has the purchase order, which started at the exporting country, and all the other documentation that it's collected along the way. And then it goes through this same sort of, circle here, where you have the port community, you have the single window, you have the agents and brokers, and you also then have the buyer who, of course, purchased the goods from the seller who originally shipped it off to you. Okay. So the whole key here is that it's a digital way to collect and capture all the information. And they can then collect the information on the other end when it arrives at its destination. And then the whole big deal is the fact that when it gets to the end, and if there's a problem, you can track and trace where the problem may have occurred, which is very difficult when you have a jumble of paperwork that you have to go through. So blockchain enables participants to trust the TradeLens data, and that's the key. Remember the immutability that is offered by putting data on the blockchain and collecting it over time. You know that somebody's not going to go back in time to tweak or change bits of data along the way. You know, because of its immutability, that the data is going to stay uncorrupted along the way. So knowledge that it is impossible for any single organization or individual to alter the information on the platform's blockchain network. So we have in TradeLens the things that we've heard a lot: shared replicated ledger. We have immutability. Okay. We have a permissioned blockchain. Within there's also channels. Now, channels are basically divisions within the software itself that allows certain types of people, like the container ship company versus the port people versus the agents that represent buyers and agents that represent shippers, all those different channels that can be given different permissions within the system to see only what they are responsible to see and what they are have the need to see. So it divides the blockchain network into separate sub-networks. Data in any given channel is only distributed to nodes that are part of that particular channel. Okay. And then here we come with selective endorsement again. Selective endorsement is the reason the TradeLens network will never suffer the same criticism that Bitcoin does because of huge power consumption. Because instead of power consumption to secure the network, they already know who the participants are. They're already trusted on the network. So TradeLens is much, much more efficient because the nodes that are validating the network are trusted nodes and can verify the transactions without a problem. And then, of course, every network has smart contracts. The network has to know what to do with each piece of information, how to collate it, what form it goes in, what report it goes on, all of those different things. The smart contracts have to know what to do with all the information and data that it receives. So the smart contracts move forward along the way. Okay. So truth, today the primary player in the most customs procedures is the importer. They or their agent are responsible for filing a customs declaration. So here I am. I'm the importer for some goods that are coming from, let's say, China, and it came on a container cargo ship, and I have a container coming into the port of Los Angeles, and I am responsible then to present to the customs agent information about that container, and then that customs agent can go verify that I'm getting the right container, do whatever they're supposed to do. So I'm responsible, if I'm the importing agent, to give them that information. Well, as soon as the container is stuffed on the exporting country, the importing country's customs agency should be able to pull the purchase order, the packing list from TradeLens, and use them to perform a risk assessment on the shipment. In other words, they're going to be able to open the doors, and they're going to be able to see that inside the container is exactly what the bill of lading and everything that TradeLens has collected along the way is what it says it's supposed to be. and that can be verified then. And that's what the risk analysis is. Okay. So eventually, in the 1970s, they had this whole big idea. I remember the 1970s where they were talking about, computers were going to make everything paperless. Well, we're a long ways from it, unfortunately, but paperless to the shipping industry is a really, really big deal because, they continued to work, and by 2010, they still had not accomplished it until TradeLens came along. So for 40 years after the 1970s, documents still were the main part of international trade. Smart contracts now allow for the creation of those automated processes, and so that they can cross international lines and reduce the amount of overhead, which reduces cost. I mean, you don't have to be charged as much if you don't have a customs agent spending 10 hours on your paperwork when he could spend an hour looking at TradeLens data. Okay, so now TradeLens has also got several front ends. They're saying here that TradeLens members can connect to the platform using regular web application interface, or they can use the platform's out-of-the-box user interfaces that IBM has developed. So adopting it now is much simpler than it was a year and a half ago when I made those initial videos. They didn't talk about the user interfaces at all back then. So basically, the people that benefit by it are all the people along the way that have to pay for everybody's services. And so if you can get it through customs quicker, easier, faster, you're going to save money because you're not going to have to pay anybody as much to validate your data. So that's our update on TradeLens. And I sure hope that everyone here has enjoyed that. Please help me grow the channel if you haven't already to hit that subscribe button. And we'll try to keep this going and keep the information floating out there.